UFC on ABC, Whittaker versus de Ridder is this weekend, and I'm going to give my breakdowns and predictions for the entire card, starting with the prelims, ending with the main event. Let's get into it. Martin Buday versus Marcus Bucheca, heavyweight fight to kick off the card. I'm going with Bucheca by submission. Buday has a decent record. He only a couple of losses. His UFC loss was to Shamil Gaziev. He has a split decision win over Lucas Brzezinski, who just got wrecked by Ryan Spann last weekend. But Bucheca is an ADCC champion, an IBJJF Hall of Famer. No UFC fights, but he has fought in one. This guy is an elite grappler. Elite grappler. He doesn't have like a huge MMA record, but heavyweights can't grapple. Ryan Spann actually just showed that when he took out Lucas Brzezinski in like one round with his grappling. I think that Bucheca might just take him down and submit him. Not do I think that is actually what's gonna happen. Bucheca is gonna take Martin Buday down, submit him really quickly. I think this is gonna be a first round submission. Moving on to Mohamed Yahya versus Stephen Nguyen. I'm going with win by decision on this. Both guys are winless in the UFC. Like literally, they've lost all their UFC fights. So I feel like this is like a loser might get cut scenario. Yahya has a 12-5 record, very low output. He gets hit way more than he lands, whereas Nguyen has he's a 9-2 record, 3 times as much output, and a much cleaner striker. And at the featherweight division, I feel like a lot of the time output dictates who's really going to win this fight. So I could see Nguyen TKOing Yahya, but more likely he's just going to win on volume, and this will be a decision win for one. One of them's finally going to have a win in the UFC, and I think it's going to be Stephen Nguyen. Moving on to Ibo Aslan versus Billy Elekana. I'm going with Ibo Aslan by KO. He's 14-2. All 14 wins are by KO. This guy's a bit of a beast. Billy is 7-2. He absorbs 2 times more than he lands. Meaning like he throws a shot, he gets 2 back in return that he actually catches on the face. Billy's defense is 33%, meaning like if you throw 3 shots at him, 2 of them are actually going to get through. Ibo's also Turkish, Ibo Aslan, and this is a UAE card, so I'm guessing this is going to be likely a favorable matchup from the UFC to just help build more of the regional stars in that area. So I'm expecting another mauling, a KO. This guy's won all of his fights by KO. How can I go against anything other than a KO for this? Moving on to Amanda Ribas versus Tabatha Ricci, the women's strawweight bout. I'm going to go with Amanda Ribas by decision, although I'm not super confident in this pick. Ribas has fought much higher level opponents, but they were losses. She lost to Rose Namajunas, lost to Macy Barber, lost to Mackenzie Dern, but she has also beaten Mackenzie Dern earlier in her career. She's coming off of like a few losses recently. Tabatha Ricci has a better record, but lower tier. They're both same age. Amanda Ribas is 31, Tabatha Ricci's 30. They're both coming off of losses. I'm probably just picking Amanda Ribas because of that smile, but it's not that she's smiling here, but she's when you see her at the weigh-ins and everything like that, you'll see her with a big smile on her face. And it's a women's strawweight fight. I'm not going to guess that this is going to go to. I'm not guessing this is going to get finished. If it does, amazing. I think Amanda Ribas could get like a submission win here, but in reality, it's most likely going to be a decision either way. And I'm just going with Ribas because of that smile. Moving on to Davey Grant versus Damon Blackshear. This is a bantamweight fight. I'm going with Blackshear by submission. Davey Grant has 4 submission losses. A bit of a grappling liability, honestly. Blackshear, over half of his wins are by submission, and he's on a bit of a streak right now. His only recent losses are to Montel Jackson and Mario Bautista, who are both decent names in the division. He's also going to be, I would say that Davey Grant has more size, like he's probably a bigger fighter out of the two. I'm interested to see when they're in the cage together, but I give the skill edge to Blackshear here. Probably not going to be a banger, very low fight of the night potential here, but I'm going with Damon Blackshear by submission. Maybe he could get like a performance of the night with like a really slick submission. We'll see. Moving on to Muslim Salikhov versus Carlos Leal. This is a welterweight fight. I'm going with Salikhov by KO or TKO. Salikhov has the hometown edge. Again, if your name's Muslim Salikhov and you're fighting in the UAE, I'm gonna say that they're probably giving you a decent matchup. Um, he's Salikhov has lost to some of the gatekeepers, Nicholas Dalby, Randy Brown, Li Jingliang, the Leech, but he has 12 UFC fights, tons more experience at this level than Carlos Leal does. He's on a two-fight win streak with wins over Santiago Ponzinibbio, which is a great win, plus a wheel kick KO of the night. Carlos Leal has a 1-1 UFC record. His only win was versus Alex Morono, who's a bit of a can. He likes to bang, so I do think that this is probably going to be a finish because of that. Like Carlos Leal's output is crazy. He does go in there, but he also absorbs a lot of punches. So I'm going with Muslim Salikhov by KO or TKO. Moving on to the prelims main event, Bryce Mitchell versus Said Nurmagomedov. His bantamweight debut for Bryce Mitchell. I'm going to give him the size and strength edge. I'm picking Mitchell by decision here. Bryce Mitchell, he has a few losses, but they're only to the absolute elite guy. Well, mostly to elite guys. Ilia Topuria, Gene Silva. Actually, we haven't seen whether or not Gene Silva's super elite yet, but he looks it. I mean, every time he's in there, he looks like a fucking nightmare. Josh Emmett, who isn't elite, but he's definitely that top level gatekeeper. And if you look at those fights, I mean, Emmett landed that one-hitter quitter that just put Bryce Mitchell legit into the shadow realm. That is what it is. That's going to happen sometimes. Gene Silva also, like when I saw Bryce Mitchell fighting against Gene Silva, he came in with a good game plan, but Gene Silva's just a beast. And again, you lose to Ilya. It's okay. You know what? Is what it is. I'm not going to fault a guy for losing to the person who we're calling the pound-for-pound champion right now. Said Nurmagomedov, he's solid, he's slick, but he hasn't fought those top-tier guys. He also only loses by decision. He has some submission wins, so even though Bryce Mitchell has the submission threat, I think it's just safer to go with a decision here. Bryce is a gamer, man. He comes to fight. He game plans for his fights. I think that just the size advantage is going to be really helpful. He also has that like grappling strength to him. I see Bryce Mitchell winning this by decision. Moving on to the main card, Nikita Krylov versus Bogdan Guskov to open this up. I'm going to go with Krylov by submission. Light heavyweight fight. Krylov has way more UFC experience. He's been fighting in the UFC since 2013. Guskov has the KO threat, but not great on the ground. His takedown defense is okay, but his grappling is pretty bad. Krylov has very solid takedowns and submission games. Like half of his wins are by submission, pretty much. Guskov's only submission loss, to be fair, was he got rocked first and then choked, but he's just like a KO artist. He has 50% takedown defense. He rarely sees round 3. I think that Nikita Krylov, after his recent loss to Dominic Reyes, he had taken like 2 years off there. There was a bit of cage rust or ring rust or whatever you would call it. And I think that after that and after getting KO'd, he's not looking to brawl. I think that Krylov just avoids the danger, drags it down to an area where he knows that he has the advantage and is going to submit Bogdan Guskov. Not necessarily easily. I could see this being like a round 2 rear naked choke or something like that after just like sort of dominating in the grappling in round 1. I really don't see Nikita Krylov spending any time trying to, stand and trade with this guy. I'm glad that he's back in there fairly quickly after the Dominic Reyes fight because, again, he needed to get that ring rust off, get back in there. I'm not super confident in this pick, honestly. I do feel like Bogdan Guskov could knock out Nikita Krylov for sure, especially if Krylov doesn't come in there, with a solid game plan. But I think that Nikita Krylov has way too much high-level experience to let that happen. Moving on to Azu Almabaev versus Jose Ochoa. I'm picking Almabaev by decision. Ochoa's taking this fight on short notice. He just fought a month ago, and the guy that Almabaev was going to fight had a PED test that he failed. So, you get this fight on like 2 weeks' notice. You just fought a month and a half ago. Ochoa is KO heavy, like 88% KO rate, which is absolutely wild for a flyweight. And he did just beat Cody Durden, but Cody Durden is like 1-4 in his last 5, whereas Almabaev has a huge UFC record. His only recent loss is to Manel Kape, and other than that, he's won like his last 17 fights in a row or something like that. Maybe it's like 15, something in that range. Almabaev also has 4+ takedowns per 15 minutes. So he's like landing more than a takedown around. He's from that Caucasus region. He has great wrestling. I don't know if Jose Ochoa has the experience to deal with wrestling like that. I also think that Almabaev definitely understands how to game plan and how to win fights. He's a smart defensive fighter. I don't think he's going to just brawl with Jose Ochoa and get himself knocked out. Ochoa's dangerous, but I just see him getting out grappled over 3 rounds. This is why I'm going with Almabaev for the decision. Moving on to Sharabutdin Magomedov versus Marc-Andre Barriault. Sharabutdin, the one-eyed pirate. I'm picking him by TKO. Shara has won 12 of his 15 wins by KO. His only loss in his whole career is to MVP, who is the hardest striker to prep for, especially with one eye. And I can speak from experience because I have one fucked up eye too. Shara has wins over Bruno Silva, Alexiuk, Petrosian, solid names. Barriault is 1 win in his last 4, with losses to Stoltzfus, Joe Pyfer, Chris Curtis by split decision. I really think if you're losing a striking battle with Chris Curtis, you're going to lose to Sharabutdin. Not that Chris Curtis is a bad striker, but just with that sort of sparring style that him and Sean Strickland and guys like that have, it's like, yeah, you can lose a split decision to those guys, but if you lose a split decision to that type of guy, I think that Sharabutdin is going to KO you, honestly. Marc-Andre also beat Bruno Silva, but Shara did it first, and so I also think that the UFC is likely trying to build Shara back up because he's a much more marketable fighter, right? The UFC feels like there's probably a ton of money to be made from Sharabutdin if they can get him to have a really good record. And I think it was a real mistake getting him in there with MVP. I don't know why they did that, but especially when MVP just goes up to middleweight, takes him out, and then goes back down to welterweight. But this feels like the UFC wants to get it right, get another win for Sharabutdin, start getting him back onto that win streak and go from there. Moving on to Petr Yan versus Marcus McGhee at bantamweight. I'm going with Yan by decision here. This is going to be a close fight. Yan has an elite resume, guys. Like, he has wins over Jose Aldo, Uriah Faber, Corey Sandhagen, and his losses are bullshit. Like, he has 4 losses in his 5-fight span, recently. He's won his last 2, but of those losses, it goes a disqualification to Aljo, where he kneed him in the head after completely dominating him the whole fight. It then goes to a split decision against Aldo, where he was grapple fucked the whole time. I'll come back to that, where that's not really a threat in this situation, but he lost a split decision to O'Malley, which pretty much everybody feels like he won that fight. And then the real loss that he has is to Merab, where Merab mauled him for 5 rounds, man. Like, that fight, I've watched that fight with Merab a couple times. That's terrifying what Merab Dvalishvili did to Petr Yan. To just be chasing after him the whole fight. I think it's like 20+ takedown attempts, 30+ takedown attempts, something like that across 5 rounds. It's insane. I bet Petr Yan for fucking, weeks after that fight was having nightmares about being in the ring, being in the cage with Merab. But he took a full year off after the Merab fight, which I think was good. It probably also shows what I'm talking about, because if you look back at like Petr Yan's career, it was always like 3 to 6 months between fights. 9 months before the first fight with Aljo for the belt after he beat Jose Aldo. But, other than that, he gets in there quick. So he took a year off, gets back in, has 2 wins over Song Yadong and who's the other guy that he beat? Oh, Davison Figueiredo. Yeah, so he beat Song Yadong and Davison Figueiredo, both great strikers, right? Now, Marcus McGhee is dangerous. He has good power. He knocks out a lot of guys, but very low wrestling threat. He has like zero point 0.4 takedowns every 15 minutes with a 33% accuracy. So he's not taking down Petr Yan. This is not Merab. This is not Aljo, guys. If McGhee wins, this is just going to be like a KO somehow, but I also think a striking match favors Yan. Petr Yan has incredible striking. He's sometimes a bit slow to start, but I think he's learnt a bit from that. And, usually that first round is to get reads, and then he'll like really start to put on the pace in round 2 and round 3. But he might even use his own grappling to beat Marcus McGhee here, and I also think he's learnt that he needs to get in there and start pushing the pace a little bit more in the first round. Like, his striking is good enough to do that. If Marcus McGhee can win this, he'll be a massive breakout star. We will have a new contender in the bantamweight division for, potentially a Merab fight soon, but I just don't see it happening. Petr Yan, again, he's like more of that hometown guy as well. I think the UAE wants to see a guy like Petr Yan win. I think if Petr Yan wins this fight, I'd love to see a Sean O'Malley rematch, but, let's not get ahead of ourselves. I think if this was longer than 5 rounds, I would go with Yan by finish, but just because of the fact that it's a 3-round fight, they're bantamweight fighters. I know they both have power to put the other guy out, but I see it being Yan winning by decision. Moving on to the main event, Robert Whittaker versus Reinier de Ridder. I'm going with Whittaker by 4th round TKO, guys, and I'll tell you why. De Ridder is an elite grappler. I know he just fraud-checked Bo Nickel, and if you look at his 3 fights in the UFC so far, they've all been finishes relatively quickly, relatively easily. He only has lost to one guy. Like, he lost to him twice, but other than that, has a perfect record. The one guy is like Anatoly something in 1FC. And that guy's a gigantic monster. He's a heavyweight fighter. He's a 3-division champion in fucking 1FC. It's insane. They have weird divisions there where it's like 225 pounds is light heavyweight, 205 pounds is middleweight, and then, above 225. So it's like you can be a 240 pound. Alex Pereira could be a 3-pound division champion in 1FC. No fucking problem. Alex Pereira could be a 4-division champion in 1FC based on the fact that he was able to be a middleweight champion in the UFC. So, still, regardless, what it shows is that those big, heavy guys, they can be a problem for Reinier de Ridder. And I went back and watched the 3 fights of de Ridder's in the UFC. His striking is not good, okay? He beat Gerald Meerschaert by submission. He beat Kevin Holland by submission, and then he ended up beating Bo Nickel by KO/TKO, like with those knees to the body. But when you go back and look at those fights, his striking against Meerschaert was terrible. He knocked Meerschaert down at the end of the first round, which is crazy, but Meerschaert's striking is also complete garbage. And at the first 4 minutes of that first round, Meerschaert was actually tagging de Ridder all the time. Like, de Ridder looked he lacked confidence completely. He had no confidence in his striking. He was very awkward. He looked like a baby deer walking around. He's obviously an elite jiu-jitsu grappler, but anyway, moving on to the second fight of de Ridder's career against Kevin Holland, he looked like he had more confidence in his striking, better guard, better footwork, better body movement from a striking perspective. But then in 15 seconds, he goes and takes Kevin Holland down and ends up getting the submission in the first round. So you don't really see much of the striking. And then against Bo Nickel, he definitely had, again, more confidence in his striking, but that was mostly a clinch battle the whole time because he was trying to get Bo Nickel down. Bo Nickel was trying to sort of avoid the takedowns, use his wrestling, try and strike out a distance, but Bo Nickel's striking is not that good. Bo Nickel was way too green for that fight in reality, and it just showed that the Bo Nickel striking is not fantastic, and that if you he didn't know how to deal with all of those body shots that De Ridder was putting on him to the, with his knees and with the hooks in the clinch and everything. Robert Whittaker's not that guy. Robert Whittaker has tons of experience, and his whole style is designed to keep distance, blitz in, 1-2 head kick is like his famous combination. And I just don't see a way that De Ridder's going to be able to close the distance to get Robert Whittaker down. Robert Whittaker's takedown defense is like 80+%. The only two takedowns that I can actually remember going against Robert were the Dricus takedown, which was like sheer physicality from a much bigger guy, and then the Hamzat blast double leg. Reinier de Ridder doesn't have either of those things in his arsenal. He doesn't have a blast double leg like Hamzat, and he's not anywhere as big and strong as Dricus du Plessis. In reality, Robert Whittaker's probably not taller, but stronger than Reinier de Ridder is. So I just think that Robert has the higher level experience, elite at distance management. How I see this fight going is Robert Whittaker staying out at range, doing his classic sort of, touching his feet against his calves like a weirdo, staying out of distance, catching De Ridder as he comes in with solid jabs, punishing him every time he comes in close, using good movement to stay on the outside. Whenever there's an opening, he's going to just come in, blast in for that 1-2 high kick. I do feel like De Ridder will be prepared for that blitz and will try and clinch up with Robert Whittaker as he's coming in for the blitz. But you've also got to watch out that you don't get KO'd, right? And I think that Robert Whittaker is going to do a lot of damage. He's going to break him down over time. I could see this finishing earlier, but I feel like by the fourth round, there's going to be so much damage done that he's going to be able to TKO De Ridder pretty easily. This is the other thing. De Ridder doesn't have that 5-round experience. He finishes 80+% of his fights, 90% of his fights. He only had 2 fights actually go to a decision, and I don't even know if those went to the 4th and 5th rounds, depending on when they were in his career. So he doesn't have that 5-round experience that Robert Whittaker has had over and over and over and over and over again. And even though De Ridder's striking has been improving, it's how much can you improve? Robert Whittaker's been striking since he was a child, right? And he has that awesome karate style similar to Stephen Thompson, Wonderboy, where he's able to like really keep distance, close distance, punish you. I mean, the only thing I don't like on Robert Whittaker's side here is that he is saying that he's like counting down his fights now. He says, I've got 4 fights left and I'm going to make my title run. And I don't love when guys say that. Like, De Ridder's not focused on his retirement. He's focused on becoming the best middleweight ever, hopefully, in his world, becoming a champion again in this in this organization, right? There's all of these amazing matchups that De Ridder can have, whereas Robert Whittaker's at the tail end of his career. I don't love that. He's coming off of that loss to Hamzat where he had all of his teeth broken in. But he's, how can I bet against Bobby Knuckles here? Especially like the last time I bet against an Australian was JDM, my own countryman, and fucking he ended up winning that fight. So I'm not going to pick against an Australian again, especially not in a fight like this where De Ridder does not have the striking to handle Robert Whittaker. He doesn't have the tools to be able to close the distance. I just feel like there's no way that De Ridder can really get Robert Whittaker down to submit him. And if he can't, it's going to be a long, brutal night of Bobby Knuckles, just sort of similar to what Robert Whittaker did to Vettori, where he just smashes up Reinier de Ridder's face for like 3-4 rounds, except instead of the 5-round experience that Marvin Vettori has, Reinier de Ridder doesn't have that. So I think by the 4th round, he's going to be just done and ready to get out of there. He'll have taken too much damage, and this is going to be a TKO. Robert Whittaker, 4th round TKO. These are my picks for the fight. I'm excited. This is going to be a fun card. I know that people were a little annoyed that the UAE is getting such like great cards and it feels like the rest of the world isn't, but I feel like there's been some decent cards recently. Last week, the Max Holloway Dustin Poirier fight, even though it wasn't like for a pay-per-view, it was pretty weak. The actual fight night itself ended up being awesome, and I feel like this is going to be a fun fight as well. A full fun fight card. Tell me what you think. I'm curious if you feel like I've got any of these picks wrong, where you think that they're wrong, especially on the main event and the Petr Yan Marcus McGhee fight. I'm curious to know what you think about that. But like, comment, subscribe, do all the stuff that helps this get into the algorithm. I really do appreciate you, man. And see you next time.